What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Movement Mindset powered by Station Athletics. I'm Chris Hardenberg, and today we're trying something a little bit different. All of our podcasts have been in person, but as I've kind of gone along and we're 73 episodes into this thing, I found that, for our members, the things they like hearing the most are either, stories from our staff or our members, or interviews with subject matter experts. And so I have a good friend of mine, Ben Wise, here with us today.
So today we have neither of those.
So I consider him a subject matter expert.
Oh gosh, man, you guys racked up a lot of episodes really quick.
Yeah, we've been going pretty strong. I mean, I don't even remember when we started.
Is it more than one a week?
One a week.
One a week.
Yep.
Okay, so going on a year and a half here.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So welcome, Ben.
Thanks, man.
Subject matter expert, Ben.
We'll see. TBD.
So I've known Ben for a while. I first met Ben. I was a senior in college, I think, when you came in for Overflow Camp.
Yeah, so we missed each other by a year.
Yes.
You graduated the year before I came in. Yes. But yeah, you were essentially a counselor at a camp that I went to, which is hilarious.
So yeah, and then Ben and I have stayed in touch because post wrestling, we both got into CrossFit. We both got pretty competitive, and then I stopped, and he continued to get more competitive and significantly better than me. So yeah, man, welcome to the episode. I just wanted to kind of start with you, how you got into CrossFit, and you're also a gym owner. So what brought you to open the gym?
Yeah, we've joked about this, that our stories are very similar in a lot of ways. Like, we both went to the same school. We both wrestled at that school. We were both health and physical education majors at that school. And we both went into teaching after that, because that's what you do when you go to school for teaching. And then I, as so did you, realized that, like, I don't think I want to teach. So now what do I do? And yeah, I was also very much so what happens to a lot of athletes when they get done with their competitive careers, which is like you're looking for something to fill that void. And I think I just found CrossFit on like YouTube or something. And right away I was like, oh man, this is really cool. And it wasn't like, I didn't stumble into a gym initially. I didn't really care about the community aspect of it, although those have been things obviously that I've come to find a lot of value in over the years. It was more just like, oh, I want to compete at this and try to win. And that's what actually led me to joining my first CrossFit gym and just being a member initially while I was teaching. And then pretty quickly that ended up being me adding a bunch of kind of side programming in and being very obsessed with all the things, as people do. And also coming to coach some classes and taking my L1 and doing that side of things. So pretty early on, I got into the coaching side of things. And then I was also just being sort of in the health and fitness world. I was doing some like coaching on the side of like, high school level athlete type stuff, like off-season strength conditioning programming type thing. And slowly that morphed into me moving full-time to coaching an affiliate, as well as kind of opening and starting my own coaching business, which I still run to this day alongside of our gym, which is sort of like one of the branches along with it. And Chris is one of the coaches with ZOAR Fitness still. So yeah, that continues. And then eventually it was a situation where my wife moved for work, and we were kind of in an area that didn't really have any CrossFit gyms. And I was like, man, this is something that I really miss and I found so much value in over the years that I think this is the move for, there's a gap in the market. And also it's just something that I personally just really want to pursue and do. So that's how the idea of the gym birthed. And then it's just a matter of actually doing the thing, which is way harder.
Way weird how that works.
Yeah. See, it's also funny because like working in gyms that long, you do see a lot of the internal operations. You see the struggles of owners and people that you're working for. So like I saw a lot of like what went wrong in other gyms, and also the other side of it, I've worked in gyms that have been run very efficiently, and you also see, okay, this is when things run correctly, this is how things look. So being, coaching in all the different roles that I have, and just kind of even traveling around and seeing other gyms, like you start to see of what the brand of things that you like and like what environment you want to create, what culture you want to create, and then it's just trying to execute on that when you actually get into it.
Yeah, I think what was interesting, like you said, our stories kind of paralleled each other. I think what made CrossFit also really easy for both of us to fall into is like we were both people that during wrestling still found the off season fun. And I think at times, if I'm honest with myself, even more fun than sometimes the actual season at times.
Yeah. The season is just like a grueling beatdown, whereas like off season, you have a little bit of body fat, you get to eat a little bit more. There's like sunlight. I guess that increases your mood. There's a lot of things that are appealing about off season for wrestling. Yes.
Yes. But I think even more so than that, because you and I both wrestled with guys that like were basically allergic to the weight room. Like if you did like that allergy test that and one of those was like weight room iron, they would be extremely allergic. Like they would not, like they were wrestlers to the core. Like they had no problem going to practice or wrestling in matches. But as soon as you told them to like go run or lift a weight, they were just like, why do I got to do this? Whereas for me, I friggin' loved lifting weights.
Yes.
So when you said post wrestling, it's like, hey, guess what? There's this sport and you lift weights. And if you do the weights faster than everyone else, you win. It's like, oh, well, friggin' sign me up for that,
Yeah.
But what I also think is interesting about your story. Well, actually, let me ask you this. So it sounded like you guys moved and you're like, there's no gyms around. Maybe I'll just open one. Like, was that the thought process, or in the back of your head, were you like, I'd like to own a gym one day?
Both. I think, it was very much a situation where I was like, man, if I'm just completely brutally honest, I was like, there's no quality gyms of the style that I want to be at around me. And that combined with, I think I have the knowledge and experience at this point to at least get started with opening a gym. Also knowing that I'm not naive to the fact of like how much work it's going to take and like how much it's asking of myself and of my family and of my other relationships. Like there's a lot that goes into it. So I wasn't naive about that process, but I was also like equally still excited to jump into it.
Yeah. And so it's funny for the people listening who either attend our gyms or live in our area, like what Ben is saying is probably like there was no gyms like yours around you. I can attest, guys, there's no gyms around. Ben lives out in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and like where Ben is, like the next closest CrossFit style gym is what, 20 miles away?
There's probably one that's like within maybe 10. And even them, they kind of serve, and maybe this is by design at this point, I'm not sure, but they kind of serve a little bit of a different demographic, and definitely have different style of programming. And this is one of the things that you always say is like, CrossFit's not a franchise where like everyone's the same like carbon copy. So like each one you walk into, you're gonna get slightly different experience for better or for worse, right? It's not like a McDonald's.
Right. But what I think is interesting is like you said, okay, I was like, well, you're like, well, there's one. And like, I think about our least densely populated gyms is Sparta, right? We have two in the same town. And it's like, and that's two of us, let alone like some of the other CrossFit gyms that are in the area. So it is a different challenge. It's also a unique opportunity for you because you're like, all right, well, I'll say this. The challenge is overcoming obviously less of a population that doesn't already recognize fitness as an investment that they should make. But the opportunity is that there's so little competition. So there's pluses and minuses to each of those.
Yeah, and maybe like one more plus potentially of like small towns is that like if you once you're established and you have a good reputation, like word of mouth is going to be pretty good.
Like you're the guy.
Yeah, like, and that's the case for anything, right? Like, you know, if you're in a small town and you have like, I'm thinking of it, last year we got new gutters. It's like, who would have thought of like, you know, a particular gutter business? But it's like, there's like one gutter business that like they just like clean house, right? Because like they do a good job and they're in and out within a day. They like, yeah. So it's like, if that could be you, then you're going to be successful.
It's like, JJ, do you follow this guy, Nikki Cass? Do you know who that is?
Yes, I do.
He does like, look him up. When we're done, look him up. He does like your like stereotypical like Italian like grandfather accents. But one of his characters is like Nick, like Bonafante or Benefanti, and he's like the gutter guy. It's like he does like your stereotypical. He's like, if your gutters are wonky, call Belafonte. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Like
yes,
the guy in town. All right, so that's a little bit about you, but that's going to be I think good for our ZOAR people to get to know who you are a little bit, because again, like I said, like I've been on podcasts with you a bunch. Most of it is like going back and forth about topics or getting to know me a little bit better. And so I think it's cool that, some outside listeners will get to know you and your background a little bit. But the biggest thing for our station athletics people I wanted to talk about was programming in general. And so I touched on Ben being an athlete as well as he owns a gym. He's a dad of 2. He's married. And also he's competing as a CrossFit athlete. So it's kind of a lot. But it's more than just like I sign up and do weekend CrossFit competitions. Like you can see in the upper right corner of his screen, the Metcon Rush banner. So that's a really big competition somewhere down south, I believe.
Maryland.
Oh,
the deep south of Maryland.
And then he also competed in NorCal at a semifinal. So he's super duper good at this sport. And we've talked extensively on your podcast about programming and, training or CrossFit or programming for CrossFit athletes and how it differs from a class setting. But we haven't talked about that on our podcast. So I wanted to get into that. I guess maybe talk about, Ben, a little bit of what your programming looks like, or what programming in general looks like for people looking to get better at the sport of CrossFit.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it like anything, there's multiple levels to this type of thing, right? Where it's, if you're someone who's looking to compete locally and you're able to maybe RX classes, but there's movements in other competitions locally that's like, okay, if I want to be able to compete at this level, I need to start introducing these to add a little bit of extra programming on. All the way up to like, I'm a professional athlete, I get paid to do this, and I'm trying to be the very best I possibly can be, and it's like my entire life morphs to make this thing happen. And obviously there's a lot of levels in between those two things. But I think what a lot of people, they have maybe a person or two in their mind is to like, this is what this person does, and I know they're pretty good. So often like that's where people's minds go when I start to explain this kind of thing. So I think where it starts off, like the person who is just kind of adding some extra programming into things to just try to improve their abilities as a whole, that doesn't look all that much different from class. I mean, we've talked about this, and likely it involves class for a lot of people. So like I do individual design for a number of people who also do our classes here at the gym, and it's like, maybe 70% of their volume is just doing class. And then there's basically my job is to look at the class programming and say, what things do you need to work on that are not being taken care of here? And then how can we progress through them optimally for you as an individual? So it's like, Chris, this is obviously not the case. You don't have a ring muscle up yet. It's like, okay, we need to be working on your strict pulling strength. We need to be working on certain drills so that you can actually get your first ring muscle up. Or it's like, okay, we're going to be doing an EMOM of ring muscle ups once you have them, of like, okay, we're just going to do one every minute or something along those lines, right? And you're slowly just kind of building out those types of progressions, which often are not that incredibly challenging. They're not incredibly taxing relative to like a workout that you might do in class. So it's more just like kind of adding in on and sprinkling in these different things into their week to make it all kind of mesh and work. Up to, okay, there might be someone who is doing 1 or even 2 workouts per day, separate sessions, and now they're getting way more tailored with what they're doing. They're more proficient in all the different skills, so you start to mix those together in different ways, and they have to like take on more volume. So now you're thinking about how to strategize and break up their week, where it's like, okay, if we run on this day, we should maybe avoid squatting in the next day, for like, just as an example, right? So that you're trying to like make sure the week flows in a way that makes sense so that they can go through it with the highest quality possible and continue to obviously get better at the things they need to get better at.
Right. And I think that's an important distinction. So like something we have launched at 2 of our gyms that we're eventually going to launch at all of them is what we call hybrid programming. So that's kind of what you talked about, where it's like, hey, you take class and that's perfect for what we want to do. That addresses a lot of things, but you want to get better at X. You don't have it yet. Here's a half hour of work after class each day that you can work on that specific drill, right?
Yeah.
And that's great. But I think like to use someone like yourself as an avatar, right? And the reason why I say that is because you're not at a point in the sport where it's like you could make CrossFit your sole level of income, right?
Correct. Yep.
At the same time, you're good enough at the sport that you can compete at a very high level of the sport. And frankly, just doing class and 20 to 30 minutes of a couple extra drills after class is not enough for you to compete at the level that you are and want to compete at. So, I do think there's levels to this, but I really like to, let's draw a pretty clear distinction between, someone like myself. I take class 4 times a week. Or I should say do the class workout at this point 4 times per week. And that's it. And that's good for me. And frankly, if I wanted to sign up for a weekend competition, I'd be able to compete, no problem. Right. But let's use the distinction between someone like yourself and what the demands are for you in the sport of CrossFit.
Yeah. So if we just use myself as an example, not that I necessarily love talking about myself, but
well, you signed up for the podcast, brother, so it's kind of
true. I try not to give myself as an example when I'm on these, but I guess now that I'm being interviewed, I should. Yeah, I think for a little bit of context, like right now I do like 10 sessions a week, so double days on 4 different days, let's call it. I would say one of the biggest differences between what I'm doing and what someone who's a class goer is it's, besides the fact that it's just more, which is, it's kind of obvious. It's also like I get less of just like, I don't want to say random fitness, but just like balanced, well-rounded fitness, if we're being honest, right? Because it's like, with my training age at this point, I started competitive CrossFit in 2017, let's call it. Even if that wasn't just like traveling around and doing a bunch of comps, I was at least doing like the open and like training regularly, and that was coming off college wrestling, so I was fairly serious with it. So it's been, 8 years? So it's like, if I don't do double unders and ring muscle ups for a couple months, or just touch on it once in a while, like they're not gonna go away when I come back. And I'm still going to be pretty good at those things. And likewise, there's certain things that even though I've touched on them for the better part of 8 years, I still have a competitive gap between where I am and like where I need to be if I want to be as competitive as possible. So specifically, it's like, okay, I need to drive up squatting metrics. I need to make sure my weightlifting is crisp. I need to make sure that my machine power is up to snuff, right? So like those are things that now I'm touching on multiple times every week. So, and then it's just a matter of kind of like juggling your weekly skeleton or like the outline of where things are arranged so that, again, like readiness is as high as possible for each one of those things. This is probably the best example. Is if I just go sort of through what my off-season skeleton is right now. It's like Monday morning, I have, basically some accessory, some heavy squatting, some like leg accessory, and some like grip endurance type work on that day. In the evening, right now, is a row wall ball progression.
Yeah.
Talk about
super
things.
Basic.
Talk about
Something
things
I
you've been
need.
doing for forever.
Yeah.
Yep. So like basic conditioning and then like into some like aerobic support work. So it was just like easy machine work. Tuesday morning would be just, right now I'm on like a 5K run progression. In the evening, it's basically like some handstand skill work, some gymnastics based intervals with some machines mixed in, and some like upper body accessories. Wednesday morning is back to strength work, some like power clean and jerk type barbell cycling, like clean pulls, some variations like that. And then a bunch of accessories let's come along with that. Wednesday evening is like an echo bike progression of like basically like repeat sprints. Thursday, just I often jump into class as an easy piece. And then Friday morning, right now it's in the morning it's another strength progression where it's probably like snatch, strength accessory stuff. And then in the evening, it's a long sport EMOM, just basically like, a bunch of different high power movements. And then also like another run progression. Saturday, I jump into a group training session here at the gym. So that's more of like off season. As it gets closer to the season, that'll look more and more like whatever event I'm preparing for. So when I did, let's say NorCal Classic back in the early or late spring, that was looking much more tailored to the movement selection, the time domain of workouts, the type of workouts I'm going to see there, and also just much more varied takes of things because you don't know what you're going to see. So right now it's much more structured, much more the things that I need to work on because it's more off-season mode, and then as we get closer to the season, it's going to morph and look more and more like what I'm actually going to be asked to do.
Right. I think it's interesting, kind of like what you talked about, how when it comes to the sport, a couple different things. One is everyone almost has like, OPEX calls it like your essence, like things that like you can just, like you talked about, like you could take 6 months off and never, not off, like you're working out, but take 6 months of never doing a ring muscle up and still probably do 15 unbroken.
Yeah.
Like no problem. Or double unders, like you could take 6 months off and maybe, you're still running, so you're still going to have the calf and ankle endurance. And then it's just like, you could rip out 300 unbroken. Like, versus the person who, and I've worked with some of these people, it's like, I haven't back squatted in 4 months and can still hit 450. like JJ's like rolling his eyes like, yep, I know those people. So I always feel like that's super interesting.
And you're a great example of that, Chris. It's like your training volume is way down relative to what it was, but your gymnastics are, I would imagine, still, the top tier in what you see in your classes.
Oh,
right?
I mean, JJ could probably back that up. Like we had a workout for class. What was it yesterday? The one with the bar muscle ups? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was like dumbbell power. It was pull-ups, chest to bars, and bar muscle-ups in the workout, dumbbell power cleans, and then calories on the bike. And at the end of the workout, it had 9 bar muscle-ups. Like, even at my advanced age, like there's no question I'm doing those 9 unbroken. Like, and I work out significantly less than I did before. Versus like my back squat numbers are nowhere near my lifetime best. It's just like, I like when I was competing, I was squatting or doing some sort of like knee flexion accessory work 3 times a week because it was like a non-negotiable.
That's what I just gave you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I find that interesting. The other thing is, and I hope people are are listening to this, for the folks who fancy themselves as competitive or people who want to get competitive, again, to go back to what Ben said, there's levels to this. And so like the amount of volume Ben is doing, he just rattled through no problem 10 sessions, right? And that's not to glorify it, to say that the person who's normally a class goer, who's maybe young and resilient and wants to get into the sport, should all of a sudden start doing 10 sessions a week, right? Because we've talked about that extensively. The people who are like, I want to get competitive. So they look up some online program, or they look up like, back in the day, it's like, I'll just follow whatever Rich is doing, right? Or whatever Matt Fraser's doing. And it's like, dude, not only is that guy a genetic freak, but he has years upon years upon years of building to the volume he's at right now. Like, you just plopping yourself in that is asking for burnout or an injury, right? And so being cognizant of the fact, if you are someone like Ben was years ago, who's like, all right, I want to get really competitive and really serious at CrossFit, you're going to have to add volume, but you're going to have to build to it. And it's going to take years, unless you're just an absolute genetic freak. Like, it's going to take years to build to that sustainably.
And beyond that, it takes bandwidth. Like, we talked about this, if you're an accountant, like, where are you training 10 sessions a week? Like, either you have no life and you're very single, or you're going to be soon. Like, there's no other option in between there, because it's just like like it just demands so much of you. And so it's like, for me, if I didn't have the freedom of schedule where I'm able to, do a session and then do things that are work related in between and then get back after it later on, like, if my life wasn't structured that way, I couldn't do it.
Right.
Yeah. So, and again, there's other ways that you can continue to push things, and it's I guess that's not to push people away from competing by any means. It's just like, for me, like, I guess, like, the contrast would be like, there's other things that I could do that I could sacrifice more and be better at the sport, but I've chosen to draw the line where I have for a reason. And I guess for other people listening, like, that's what you need to do, and like, that's what I encourage my athletes to do, is like, for me as a coach, it's my job to push you to the point to get you as good as you possibly can. But one of the ways that we do that is so that we don't overstep certain areas of your life and then, like, have this big backlash that results because of it, because you're either overtrained and you couldn't handle the amount that we're giving you, or because you're like, you get pushback from some other aspect of your life. Like, hey, I've been falling asleep at my desk at work. My boss is, on my case about it or whatever. Like, obviously that's an extreme example, but like that kind of thing where it's like, okay, I think these people just need to be honest about themselves, like, where that falls as a priority, and keep it there, wherever it's at.
And I think that's a super good distinction and good way to transition to the next topic around people who attend class, because, to be frank, that's 95+% of the people who are probably listening to this podcast is the class people. Yeah. And I think one thing you said, and then we'll get to the next topic. One thing you said is like, my training, meaning your training, is not quote unquote well-rounded fitness. Like, it's not. It's geared around your weaknesses, what you need to work on for the sport, versus class should be addressing what CrossFit calls GPP, right? General physical preparedness, and trying across a week to touch on multiple aspects of fitness and movement so that the accountant can come into class 3-4 times a week over the course of months and years and touch on as many of those things as possible. Because when it comes to class, the goal of that is to be as physically fit as possible, in the sense of, I can run with my kids, I can go up and down stairs, I can pick up softball, I can race my 10-year-old son without pulling a hamstring. Like, you know what I mean? Like, things like that. The goal of it is to leave the gym and to be as physically capable as humanly possible, whatever level and age you are, outside of the gym. And so I think that's an important distinction, that when you think about class, and I know from working with Ben, this speaks to everyone at Lumber Capital, and it speaks to us through Station Athletics. The premise of our programming is, how do we utilize certain movements within our fitness and design around, whether it's our CrossFit gyms or our SA Fit gyms, that you have measurable, objective ways to improve your fitness, skills you can work on to keep people mentally engaged, and then markers outside of the gym to continue to gauge fitness. Because really, at the end of the day, for most of the people in our class, the goal is to look good, feel good, and do something outside of the gym. And so the other thing I wanted to address with Ben is, with that in mind, and this is a generalization, what do you think is generally missing from CrossFit style programming that you try to plug up those holes when programming for Lumber Capital?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you start with, like, what do you see a lot of, that'll kind of tell you where the holes are. So it's like, if you go through a typical week of CrossFit classes for most gyms, it's like some days you're going to see strength and then a workout. Some days you're going to see maybe like a longer aerobic piece or potentially like intervals. And that's like 95% of classes right there. Maybe 100% of classes for a lot of people. Some gyms do like the, solo strength days. So yeah, I think when it's like, okay, that's what we're fitting in. The things that are outside of that are the things that often don't fit neatly into the strength work, or they don't fit neatly into like a traditional style CrossFit workout. So things like easier aerobic work. So thinking about, zone 2 is super popular right now. So it's like you could get on a bike and spin for 30, 60, 90 minutes at just a very conversational pace. That's something that you're not going to have time for in a class. You got a 60-minute class, you might have a couple minutes of that, but you're not going to have a very long extended bout. So that might be something that might get missed a bit, right? So if you're doing a lot of fitness that is, you're doing it basically as fast as you can, right? 4 time. It's an AMRAP. It's 5 rounds for time. You might miss certain things that are maybe a little bit more quality focused, let's call it. So that could be something that's like, okay, we're doing skill work, but it's not, these 30 handstand push-ups as fast as you can in a workout. We're doing quality sets of these movements so that you can work on the skill component of it. Or we're doing pull-ups, but we're not doing them, kipping in a workout. We're doing them strict, and we're assigning a certain tempo to it where you have a certain seconds on the lower. So there's a couple different ways that I like to think about this. It's from the like energy systems side of things, which would be more like, okay, you're doing a lot of things that are really high effort in class that are very sympathetic. So in other words, you're activating the basically the fight or flight side of the nervous system. So oftentimes you feel really, you get like a high after the workout, but then it's like also very draining. So it's balancing that. And that, by the way, is the best way to still drive fitness. But if you can still balance that with doing things like doing, as simple as it is, maybe it's an easy bike at the last couple minutes of class, or maybe some stretching, or maybe some breath work at the end of class, which we try to incorporate every once in a while. Those things can help balance that out, where you're not doing Fran and then jumping in your car right afterwards, and you're still like panting like a dog as you like go off to your stressful work meeting that you got coming up or something, right? So it's like, how can you balance those things? So it's the energy system side of things. It's also like patterns. So I mentioned like kipping pull-ups before, right? If you can do things that are like, for example, CrossFit doesn't have much strict horizontal pulling. So basically I think of like hands out in front of you, pulling to your chest. Something like a ring row, although a lot of people think of that as a scale, that's a great option for a lot of people to add in. That's only going to benefit things like shoulder health and longevity. So there's lots of little things like that. And I think it's just a matter of like, you have people at your gym who are overseeing the programming and making sure a lot of those boxes are checked off. Same thing for me as I write our programming for our gym. I'm thinking about what are people seeing throughout their week, and then how can we sprinkle in some of those other things that they're going to need to make sure that, it's oftentimes those things are actually enjoyable because it's a good contrast to what they're seeing in class, or like the meat and potatoes of class, let's call it. But then also it's important just to keep them healthy and engaged in the thing long term.
And honestly, guys, for those of you that are listening that are Station Athletics members, like, I'm not going to pretend like this is part of the reason why I had Ben on, is because we see very much eye to eye on what like group fitness style programming should look like. And I thought it was good to have an outside person come in to, I guess, maybe show proof of concept. We're not the only people who write sound programming like that. But yeah, I mean, balancing programming is really hard, especially when it comes to group fitness, because I have one person who's coming in 5 days a week and one person who's coming in 3 days a week, right? And so it's like, I can't write a 60-minute or 45-minute zone 2 session for a class program or like recovery session. Like, I can't be like, all right, guys, today's a recovery day. You're going to ride the bike easy for 30 minutes and we're going to stretch.
Yeah. Tuesday and Thursday are zone 2 days. And then Sally only comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she's like, what am I doing paying for this CrossFit membership?
Exactly. And so it's like, you can't get caught programming for the 5 times a week person at the expense of the 3 times a week person, because most of the people in your gym is a 3 times per week person. And then it's a really important, like you said, for the gym owner in your case, or general manager or coaches in our case, to educate the 5-6 time a week person to be like, hey man, I've seen you 5 days in a row. Like, you're not taking class today. Let's have you hop on a bike and stretch instead. And I do have to give credit to our general managers. Like, they're very knowledgeable on that fact. And I think they do a pretty good job. And I think it's, our coaches as well. I think it's knowing that, but then having the courage to like maybe ruffle the feathers of a member who's paying you, right? To be like, hey man, you shouldn't be taking class today. Right. Like, so I do think that's an important distinction. But even to the effect of like, kind of like you said, like doing certain things to balance the fitness of it, right? So great example, he talked about movement patterns. So in our SA Fit programming today, so I coached a class at our Ledgewood location. The workout was 5 rounds for time, 10 gorilla rows, 30 single unders, 8 kipping pull-ups, 30 double unders. And so
I like that workout.
I really like it too. Shout out Felicia who wrote it, because what I said to the class is, we're jumping rope, but we're addressing 2 different skills with the jumping rope. So you have someone who maybe has single unders down, but has to break up double unders a lot. Like 30 is not a big chunk of double unders for them to try to do it. And also the person who has double unders, often that's the quote RX. And then they actually lose the ability to do single unders. And so you haven't become more skilled at that point. You've just swapped one skill for another skill. And so it's like, let's work on both skills so you're actually a more skilled individual. And then you have upper body pulling, but in 2 different planes. And so it's like, I have the strict horizontal pulling strength of the gorilla row combined with the dynamic vertical pulling of a pull-up. Great workout, right? And then she puzzle pieced it where tomorrow you have lower body pulling, so it's a deload deadlift, and there's nothing on the rig. Because that's another big thing, is often you have people who are hanging from the rig all the time, and then you get people who get cranky shoulders. And so I think it's really important where if you have a day like today at our SA Fit gyms where you're pulling a lot or on the rig quite a bit, or back up, I know I'm bouncing around. Our CrossFit style programming yesterday was all on the rig, right? It was like 2 different EMOMs to work on upper body pulling. So it was strict tempo pull-ups and like hollow body banded press downs to work on your straight arm pulling strength, into kipping and hollow holds. And then the workout had dumbbell power cleans, the 3 different pulling movements, and bike. We're not on the rig today. You know what I mean? Yep. Like today, and then today's workout was deficit deadlifts and rear foot elevated split squats. So we now went to an accessory pulling movement that accentuates the pull from the floor. And then you have a single leg knee flexion that's then combined with an EMOM that had some other movements in it. So it puzzle pieced, if you can see that as someone listening, puzzle pieced the week well. It would make no sense if we did all that work on the rig and then today we saw toe to bar, right? Like,
yep.
Which I hate to say it, Ben, happens, you know?
It happens all the time. And we've talked about this. It happens with competitors programming too. But honestly, I think it is potentially more challenging. And I don't want to say this is to an extreme way. I don't want to say this is always the case, but it's often the case where class programming is actually quite a challenge because people don't have 10 different variations of movements that they can do hanging from a rig. Like you give a CrossFit Games athlete who's a professional at what they do, they have bar muscle ups, they have pullover, they have multiple ways that they can do chest bar and pull ups, they have ring muscle ups, and all like they can do pegboards, legless rope climbs, like so many different hanging variations, right? Where it's like, oftentimes people go to class and they're like, I can do some kipping pull ups, I can do maybe a burpee pull up, I can do toes over hips or a hanging knee raise. It's like, okay, that's what we got. There's only so many different ways that you can give that to somebody. So it's like, then it becomes creative and not only how you're actually writing the workout so that the person isn't doing hanging knee raises for the 17th time this month. but it also becomes important about like how you give them scales so that it's not always the exact same thing every single time, because that's really easy to fall into. It's like, I'm coaching the class, it's really busy, and I'm not, we've probably both been in gyms where they're just like, you know what, do these hanging knee raises, you'll be fine, right? And it's just like, I get this every time, right? So it's also important that you vary that, no different than you would for a higher levels of athletes. Yeah, you're going to do that by design there. You also, like, while you're writing the class workouts, it's important to be thinking about what scaling options are going to be given to your people who are doing the class and how they mesh throughout the week as well.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we've started to do on our end with our programmers is like sometimes they'll assign specific scaling options where it's like, hey, scale this in this way. And I think that's also super helpful as well. Because if I'm a part-time coach, which most of our staff is, it's like, all right, I just left my teaching job. And so it's like, there's some days I have the mental bandwidth to get super creative with scaling. And there's some days my kids were terrible. I was stuck in traffic. I got here later than I wanted to. And it's like, you're kind of frazzled and the class is super busy. And so like to have those scaling options immediately into the programming sheet we use, I would imagine is like super helpful to just be like, great. I know Sally, I've coached Sally a ton. This is the scaling you're doing because I know where you're at skill wise, but it's also been dictated to me on what scaling option is best for this workout or this skill. And so I think it's important, guys, if you're a class goer at our gyms, you hear what Ben's saying, where it's like, when you're coming into the gym, although there might be some days, because everyone, I don't know if your gym's similar, Ben, everyone's like, oh, I love the barbell. I just want everything barbell. And it's like, that has its place, but like coming on the day we're doing the strict tempo pull-ups too, because if you want to do the barbell and not just do it, but do it for a long time because you're healthy, that stuff is super important too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the case with anything in life. Like, you don't just get to choose to do things. I mean, you could, but you shouldn't just choose to do the things in life that are like convenient, easy, and fun. I mean, if there's a difference between just like having fun and doing things that are like meaningful and fulfilling and pursuing them with like all of yourself in like the best way possible, like showing up and doing it. Like if you're gonna do it, like do it correctly. Like, don't just come to the stuff that looks fun. Don't just, scale back to something because it's easy and you can get through it faster, not be the last one done in class or whatever. It's like, you're doing this and you signed up because you want to see like meaningful change. It's like, you got to remind yourself of that sometimes, even when it's like, people love joking around about that sort of thing, but also like be honest about like where you're at, like mentally, and also just like in your mindset as you like approach like certain days where you like know it's going to be challenging movements too. Like, and this is the case for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a really high level athlete or an everyday class goer. It's like there's going to be things that you feel, if you're honest with yourself, much less excited to do. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't still be very focused and trying to do your best in those things.
Right. Yeah, totally. Ben, anything I missed or anything you wanted to touch on before we signed off?
I mean, you and I have talked a lot, so if people want a topic, I'm sure they can go find one.
So yeah, guys, you can always look at any of our past episodes, Movement Mindset. Ben's podcast is, I don't even remember.
The Fitness Movement.
The Fitness Movement. So lots of movement between Ben and I. We're just moving all over the place. So
that's right.
We've touched on a lot of topics. So hopefully this came through all right. Like I said, we might be having a little more remote episodes going forward as I try to find more subject matter experts, Ben.
There you go.
Ben, thanks for coming
on. When you find one, let me know, man.
Thanks for coming on, man.
I'd love to talk to somebody like that someday.
Stop.
Thanks, dude.
As always, guys.
It's fun.
Like and subscribe to us on YouTube and Instagram. Give us a 5-star rating on the podcast platform you listen on. See you at the gym.